What's up guys, it's Stanky here again, and I'm making a video on mid matchups from the International. So I wanted to look at some of my sort of favourite or the accepted better mid players in the International and look at some of the more classical matchups. I wanted to try to find games where there wasn't a whole lot of, early roaming or 2v1s or 2v2s in the mid lane, but where there's two sort of commonly played heroes in the mid lane, sort of emulating something that you might more often see in your pub games, and just have a close look at how they play the lanes. So here we're going to have a look at WeHa versus SumaiL, which I'm sure you both know good mid players for sure. So I wanted to start here before the lane meets because it's actually kind of important what happens before the lane starts. So they smoke on DC and teleport to the mid lane and place this observer ward here, which actually gives them really good vision of what's going on the enemy team. It allows them to sort of see what if they're positioning here for this top rune, and as you can see, the EG have gone and placed theirs top early on, trying to get the lane ward down. But what DC end up seeing is they see Zai come middle and place a ward here in the mid lane, and I'll show you, they see it and they ping it out. Someone would have been clicking on his inventory to see it, but obviously he just walked back and forward, so then turned on the spot, so it was quite obvious that he placed one there, and that's very important for your mid lane matchup. And then what they actually do here is they've saved 100 gold on Naga, and then he doesn't have enough for sentries, so what they do is they give Naga the rune so that he gets 200 gold and can buy sentries straight away. So if you're mid, you could look at stuff like that if you do see the ward there, or if you're see a ward go down in your lane, you could think about not taking the bounty ring yourself and giving it to one of your supports if they have gold left over. But whether that's something that is actually repeatable in pubs, I'm not really that sure. But let's get towards the lane. I'm just going to pause here to talk about this ward quickly before I move on to the laning phase. So WeHa wants to get rid of this ward as soon as he can, especially against QoP, because what it allows SumaiL to do is have vision of this high ground here. So if this, and he can hit his shadow strikes uphill from the low ground. So if the WeHa's trying to play this vision line up here to try to dodge shadow strike, this ward counters that. So SumaiL can just run at him, and because he's the one to be the aggressor in the lane, right? Because if you're trading with a Potom, the base damage on QoP is higher, and if he's got the advantage of having shadow strike, so if he can walk up to you and get a shadow strike on you and start trading, that's terrible for WeHa. So that's what he's trying to avoid. So if if this water's here, he can just walk down to here and then cast his shadow strike up at WeHa here, who is trying to stay in fog. If this water's gone, then he can sort of play back and forward on this fog and juke SumaiL. Also, you get the added bonus of if you eat it with a tango, you get double regen, but that's a very minor bonus. But let's get to the laning phase. So here we go. As you can see here, WeHa's blocked the creep wave so that the range creep hits the wave first and starts tanking the damage, and the ranged creep dies. He gets the deny off on it, which is really important because the range creep actually has like about 40 to 45% of the lane XP. I don't know the exact figure, but it's hugely important for getting experience. And then what he does here is he aggroes this creep. Whether he did it on purpose to start with, I'm not sure, but now that he has, he decides to hold it here, because part of the reason is to actually get it back aggro onto these creeps. Now he'd have to run right forward, and then he'd shadow strike to take a whole lot of damage from the QoP. So he's actually going to take less damage by just letting it hit him occasionally and running left and right so that it doesn't hit him quite so often. He's trying to stay in experience range so that he can at least get the experience from this creep and maybe get the last hit on it. But then he pulls it back up to the tower here and keeps it just out of tower range so that it doesn't take any damage from the tower, and it gets killed very slowly so that by the time it's dead, the actual wave is pushing forward. And now the lane equilibrium has gone from here to here. SumaiL's pulled the wave back to his side, and WeHa's done the same thing. He's pulled it back right under his tower. This is killing them quickly, but it's also getting them off this, getting them out of the aggro range of his creeps. So his creeps are now going to push into the tower of SumaiL, and SumaiL's not doing the same thing that WeHa's doing now. WeHa's jostling them outside of tower range, and again letting them attack the creep wave here outside of tower range, and SumaiL's all die quickly to the tower. So now this wave is going to push back and meet its equilibrium and back up here, right where WeHa wants it. And he did eat the ward before, I'm not sure if he pointed that out, but that ward's gone, so now playing this high ground is really beneficial for WeHa, because SumaiL doesn't have a vision of it. And he's going to be losing the last hit war here. SumaiL's going to be getting off way more denies because of his higher base damage and sort of better laning phase, but WeHa's trying to do the best he can and sort of manipulate the creep equilibrium rather than taking straight up trades with the QoP. He did eat a Shadow Strike there, but it's not the end of the world. So here he's got a creep advantage, so he's got 3 alive, or 4 alive, sorry, and SumaiL only has 2. So he decides to go for the trade there, and when SumaiL pulled the creeps towards him, or tried to right click on Weeha, he actually took damage from the entire creep wave, which is why he's so low, even though he hasn't actually been getting harassed by the QoP that much. So now what happens is kind of interesting. Weeha picks up a haste rune from top, and now he uses it quite effectively to sort of piss with SumaiL, basically. So he's just jostling back and forward, staying out of range, but he can a lot more easily sort of play the last hit game here. Pulls the aggro of this creep. It's actually quite talented what he did there. He pulled just the low creep, which is really hard to do. It's quite a skill. You have to, like, people when you practice, you have to, like, the pros will put on their, I think it's 600 range finder box, and then like memorize that in their head basically, so that they can pull only the creeps that they want to pull with creep aggro by right clicking on the enemy hero. So he pulled back just the low one, but left this other one here, and there he dodged SumaiL's Scream of Pain. So this is the range on it, and Weeha knows the range obviously, so he's staying just out of it, and he comes forward nearly inside of it and then runs out with haste, so keeping out of the range of SumaiL's spells, and also making him waste his mana and the cooldown. He's figured himself out a salve here earlier as well, and it's going to become really important at the 4-minute mark, you'll see. So again, he's got the wave right where he wants it, because of how he's been manipulating the creep wave, but we've got the 4-minute rune coming up sort of soon, so we've got a plan for that. SumaiL does the same thing with arrowing range creeps with Sacred Arrow. It guarantees the last hit, and it's quite low mana cost, and is if you've got your bottle coming out and you're going to be regening, you know, health anyway, you may as well use some mana up so that your bottle's use is more efficient. So SumaiL's coming in here to try to last hit him, harass him, and like push him off the wave. So he pulls the creeps back under his towers here, so that he still has some chance of last hitting them, even with tower damage, and avoids the harass from SumaiL. And now he's actually, because he's done that, and he's pulled them into the tower, and the tower has killed his quickly. Now he's got the creep advantage, and his wave's going to start pushing towards SumaiL, and he's trying to counteract that by using Scream of Pain to get this wave pushing before the 4-minute mark. So Weeha is going to come in here and start doing the same thing, trying to push his wave forward, trades with the QoP here, and gets a Starstorm off both on the wave to push the wave forward, and hits SumaiL with it, both to harass and push the wave. And then he's going to wait for this Shadow Strike to finish up, and he's going to use his salve straight away, and his bottle. Where's player perspective? Sorry. So yeah, he bottles up, salves up.
You have no right.
And he sees SumaiL going for the rune, and he knows he can follow him here, because he's actually used his salve at a good time, and SumaiL can't fight him here, right? He just can't, because he's at half health. If he didn't have the salve, which is a huge mistake that a lot of players make at lower MMRs, is they don't buy enough regen. So buying this salve before his bottle actually made this rune his. QoP can't fight him here, because if he blinks forward, Weeha can just leap on top of him and double Starstorm, and he's dead. He's at half health, right? If he tries to run forward, he has to come in close range, and he can eat an arrow, he do the same thing, eat a double Starfall. Like if he tries to run in and grab it and then blink out, he's at risk of dying, because he's going to have to walk into this rune spot, and he can just fire the arrow at the rune, or he can just run up next to him and Starstorm. So not only does this get Weeha the rune, but it denies it to QoP as well. This bit's really important too. We'll watch it from SumaiL's perspective. He knows that Potham's up here and knows what he would do in this situation is come back around here and look for an arrow, which Weeha's actually doing. So he plays right over the right side of the wave and on top of this cliff here, so that he has vision of it. If he ran down here to this spot right here and was last in the creep, this would be dark, so he wouldn't see the incoming arrow that smacks him. Weeha's just hoping that he's, you know, positioning his screen badly, or that his reactions are slow and he can hit him with this arrow. But SumaiL played it well. If he was standing over here and like down the hill, some other stupid position, he'd probably end up dead. And then we are getting that rune actually forces SumaiL back. He gets his bottles up, but you'll soon see in a minute that he actually gets forced out of the wave, which is a huge victory for a Potham. So even though he's down on CS, SumaiL's up on CS, and like if you just looked at that, you'd think he's winning this lane. But they're actually, you know, SumaiL should have the advantage, and he is slightly ahead in levels. But weehaw actually manages in the second here to push him off the wave. So he starts trading with him. He knows he's bottled up. Doesn't have any read. His mana's low. He's only got 90 mana, so he knows you can fight him too. That's the really important thing. Let's see if he actually clicks on him to check his mana before he does that. He must have done it earlier. Or he just knows it's on cooldown, I guess. Runs in, trades with him, pops Starstorm, and this actually forces SumaiL back out of lane because his bottle's empty, the runes are gone, and he's got no health and no mana. So he sends him back here, and SumaiL's actually got to level 5 and has this whole creep wave. So he's actually going to come out pretty close to the same experience that SumaiL has, and similar last hits, even though he's got 10 denies, or you know, more than weehaw does. So very well played lane by weehaw, in my opinion. And then this is the gank, and I'll sort of stop the video here because the laning phase ends. It's really the first 5 minutes that I'm most interested in, but this is a cool gank that gets pulled off by PPD and Zai. PPD actually was looking to come middle here, and they go at the 5-minute mark, so the early wards have expired, but they did smoke, and PPD was looking at coming middle, but chose to come from the side lane. And the reason, I think, is because if you look at this screen position from weehaw, his focus is going to be on these creeps here. That's where he's looking. So if you run from this direction, why is my fog all messed up? Sorry that I keep slowing the video down. I know it annoys some people, but it's messed my fog apparently. His attention is going to be on this part of the creep wave. So if a Shadow Demon appears right here and tries to use his Q on him, it's going to be a lot more obvious, and he can turn and jump away. But if he's focusing here and then up out of the corner of his eye, he wants to be looking for this game. So he comes in, there's this weird effect where he sort of starts the leap as the disruption goes off, and then the combo from Zai. Scream from QoP gets the kill on weehaw, but that's sort of a side note. But it's the laning phase that we're really interested in here. Alright, well I hope you guys learned something. I'm going to do some more of these on some other mid matchups. Check them out if you're interested. Thanks guys, bye.